They've got this knowledge all over the place. And so they usually come to me wanting to write a book. So I don't usually have to convince them. I don't usually have to tell them, the benefits of writing a book. They've heard it, they know it. Many of them, especially speakers, high-level consultants, they need these books for the next things that they're doing in life. There's some stages that you can't get on unless you're an author, some of the bigger stages. So
welcome to the Business Ownership Podcast, brought to you by Awareness Strategies, helping you navigate the waters between entrepreneurship and ownership. Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedlak, and I'm super glad that you're here with us today because I'm here with my most amazing guest, Kim. Kim, thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's a pleasure and an honor, Michelle.
All right. So give everybody a highlight of who you are and what you do for business.
So, hi, I'm Kim Thompson-Pinder, the extraordinary word ninja. I'm Chief Visionary Officer and CEO of RTI Publishing. I work with professionals, consultants, speakers, high-level coaches to help them ghostwrite, produce, and publish their signature books. And they use these books as marketing tools that converts readers into clients and helps them scale their business.
I love it. So how did you get into publishing and do your thing?
Well, that's a bit of a story.
Tell tales. I love a story.
It actually starts when I was 4 years old. And my mom passes away. And it was a really hard time in my life. And, I didn't feel it as much until I went to school and I realized how different I was from every other kid who had a mom. And in grade 2, I had this teacher. She was beautiful, wonderful, amazing, smart, talented. And I just wanted to grow up to be just like her. Every night I used to imagine that, my dad was going to marry her. I mean, I didn't know if she was married or not, but, my dad was going to marry her and she was going to come home and she was going to take care of me. And in grade 2, I could write sentences for the first time. So I've always had a very vivid imagination. But for the first time, I could write out all these stories that were in my head. And I don't know about you, but I remember the first time I wrote out a story, really badly drawn pictures. I still cannot draw to this day. And I handed it to her. And, she was saying, Kim, it's so good. It's great. It's wonderful. And of course, my 7-year-old grieving little heart that just wanted a mom latched onto her like glue. And, over the period of several months, I just emotionally overwhelmed this poor woman. I was handing her stacks. Like if you can't see, if you're listening to this, I've got like my hands really far apart, this huge
You're
stack.
like J.K. Rowling coming to a... Okay, I know I'm 8, but I can do this. I've got this 3-part series called Peace and Love, Peace and War, or War and Peace. You can tell I never read the book.
Yes.
Carry on.
But anyway, I kept handing her these huge stacks because I just wanted a woman to affirm me, right? I didn't have a mom who was at home. Now, don't get me wrong. My dad was amazing. Okay. So I don't have one of these stories, where my mother dies and my dad's this drunk, abusive person, right? My dad was amazing. He basically told the family, because they said that, some of the family's members said my dad should give my sister and I up for adoption. And my dad said, I know I don't usually use the kind of language you do, but basically he told them, to either help him or take a flying leap because he was raising his girls. So that was the kind of dad I had, but it still wasn't a mom. And so I think I just emotionally overwhelmed this poor woman to the point that one day she looked at me and she said, Kim, stop writing. You're not a good writer. And I carried those words for 30 years, subconsciously, didn't even realize they were there, but I would just never write. Don't get me wrong. It's high school. I wrote the things I had to write.
Teacher, that's just
in
wrong.
English.
Go get her some books. Go get something to teach you. Clearly there's an interest there.
But, the thing is, back in the late 60s, early 70s, when she would have gone to teachers college, it's not like they had courses on, how do you, they didn't take psychology courses back then.
How do you
so she would have had a course on
8-year-old that has a crush on you and wants you to be your mom.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing was, she didn't know how to deal with a grieving little girl.
Right.
Like this was all coming out of my grief of not having a
Oh,
mom, right? So,
yeah.
you know, I looking back on it, she didn't say it because she really meant it. She was just trying to get me to back off a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Um, so
Oh,
fast forward 30 years. I'm married, I'm mom, I've got my own kids, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm getting a website. This is 2011, and I am getting a website, and I was like a bucket list dream come true. My own website. And somebody was setting it up at a price I could afford, even better. And the gentleman emailed me one day and he said, Kim, your website's ready. We got to set up your blog. Okay. I
oh.
had been reading them forever. I had no clue what they were called. I emailed them back. What's a blog? And in the next few words, I was in a God inspired crisis in my life because he wrote back, you have to write. I do not remember what the rest of the email said. And in that moment, those words my teacher said to me screamed into my head, Kim, don't write. You're not a good writer. And I actually kind of jumped back. I'm like, whoa, where's that coming from? Right. And so I began to explore it and I realized that those words had been in my subconscious for a very long time. That every time I went to write, those words were in the back of my head and I just didn't write. And I'm like, okay, what do I do with these words? Like, and God, I prayed about it, I thought about it, God helped me, and all of a sudden I remembered what my teacher had said to me that day, and I had a choice to make. Either I was going to sit there and allow those words to continue to have power in my life, or I had to let them go. And there was a part of me that I was scared to let those words go, but I also knew that I was being prompted to let those words go. So I took responsibility for my part. I realized I overwhelmed my poor teacher. I recognized that she said it probably not because she meant it, but because she just needed me to back off. I forgave her. Oh yeah, I forgiven. Those big words. I let it go. And then I had to start to write. And let me tell you, I had
Then the
50 to
fun
60
began.
crumpled after 3 days, I had 50 to 60 crumpled pieces of paper on the floor because back then I wrote everything out by hand and then typed it out. I learned that's a very long process, so I had to figure out how to type because
Right.
but I had a blog post and I put it on my brand new website and I had a few people look at it and they loved it. It said it helped them, it inspired them, it taught them all the things that I wanted to do with my writing. And guess what? The 40-something-year-old heart in me said, okay, I'm going to write. And so I was writing blog posts. I do not have enough time to share the story with you about my writing my first books. That's a whole story in of itself. Needless to say that I had to do everything myself. I had no money for courses. Google and Udemy were my very best friends, and my computer almost went out the window so many times. And the only reason it didn't was because my husband was a computer guru, and if I did, he would have divorced me. But I got my books out. Fast forward 2015, my son is getting married. It's a very expensive year. We also have 2 cars that we're driving by faith. So, Michelle, have you ever driven a car by faith before?
You mean the one that had a cracked manifold and it looked more like a steam engine going down the highway than a car? Yeah, I had one of those.
So every day we had 2 vehicles we had to replace. Every day you get in the car, you pray that you make it where you have to go. You start driving in faith, believing you're going to make it to where you have to go. You do the same when you come back home. And so I'm sitting on a freelance site one day because great with words, love music, crafty. Like I said, do not ask me to draw anything and do not ask me to put colors together. It does not happen very well because my wonderful, blessed, awesome dad was colorblind. So any color sense he gave me was completely and 100% totally messed up. So I'm on a graphic design site, hiring a freelancer, just that little God thought, you should check out writing jobs. And I'm like, I could do that. And I couldn't believe what people were paying for writing jobs. So I applied immediately because I had already published my own books. They had good reviews on Amazon. I started getting writing jobs. Within a year, I had so much business coming in because, I had to learn how to do everything myself so I could write. Okay, my editing was not that good. I had actually my best friend edit my stuff because I can
Editing
write,
is
but
a personality type all unto itself.
oh, yeah, tell me about it. But I learned how to do everything myself. So
Nice.
within a year, I had a lot of business coming in. I decided I felt it was like my calling. And so I started RTI Publishing officially in 2016. By 2017, I realized I had to make some changes because I was working with a lot of people I didn't want to work with. So that was a refining process in there. But, since then, it's just grown, it's changed, it's evolved, it's just become a part of who I am.
Nice. I love it. So now when you're working with people, you were working specifically with business related books. Yes. What made you
Yes.
decide to go down that route?
Well, I am an entrepreneur at heart. And I spent the first 12 years of my entrepreneurship journey failing. I spent the next few years figuring out how to grow. And, when I started RTI Publishing, I had been an entrepreneur probably, at least 15 to 20 years at that point. And I realized that entrepreneurship was part of my soul. I never thought, this was not something I thought of when I was growing up. I was going to be a music teacher. I actually did teach music when my kids were little for 7 years. I volunteered, taught music for 7 years in my kids' school. But entrepreneurship was not something that I thought of. But when my kids were little and we needed to bring in some extra money, growing up without a mom, I was not going to put my kids in babysitters. I had lived that life. And so, joining network marketing was just a great way for me to earn extra money. And I spent many years in that. And then after my dad died, I took a year off. I had lost a lot of people, hadn't grieved. But when I was done that year, my mother-in-law had a small little business she ran from her home that she had worked in a company. And when they decided to move, all the clients of the company said, listen, start your own company because we don't want to work with the company. We just want to work with you. So she actually started her own little company. She could run it from home. It was all online based, right? It was just a lot of being the middle person, pricing, stuff like that. So she said to me, well, I'm done with this. Do you want to take it over? So I took it over for a few years. And so I had all this entrepreneurial journey. I'd had a lot of failure. I'd had not really any success, but I had had many years of learning. So when I started RTI Publishing, it was just really the right time at the right place to take everything that I had learned, put it into action. And, it wasn't easy. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. 8 years in, almost 9 years in. Wow. Still learning, still growing, but I love the adventure. And I'm saying all this because I can't remember the question that you asked me in the first place, Michelle.
It is all good. Why business? And you answered it perfectly clearly. Well, and it's funny because I've been watching some Mark Cuban stuff. And so billionaire, highly successful at almost everything he touches turns to gold. And he says the exact same thing. He just loves to learn. Failure is not really failure. It's a learning experience. And you take the lessons and it saves you a lot of money later. So as expensive as they are now, they're a lot cheaper in the long run. So it all depends on how you look at them. And I love it. So when you're working with business owners, how do you kind of craft what you do around them? Like, do they know that they have a book inside them? Are they going, hey, this is what I want to do? Or are you helping them pull the ideas out? How does that whole process work?
So usually most of the people I'm working with usually already have a fairly well-defined business. They're professionals, they're consultants, speakers, high-level coaches. So they usually have like a lot of knowledge. Some of it's not defined though. So part of the process that we go through in the book, writing the book, is actually creating their thought leadership. So it's not just about the book, it's actually putting everything together in a way that they can use to promote themselves, promote their business, promote their message. We work a lot on their messaging and cleaning the messaging up. They've got this knowledge all over the place. And so they usually come to me wanting to write a book. So I don't usually have to convince them. I don't usually have to tell them, the benefits of writing a book. They've heard it, they know it. Many of them, especially speakers, high-level consultants, they need these books for the next things that they're doing in life. There's some stages that you can't get on unless you're an author, some of the bigger stages. So some of my clients have come to me because there was a stage they wanted to get on. And basically the event coordinator told them, listen, you're perfect. Write us a book and you'll get on. But
Oh.
we don't just write any books. We want these to be high level, very valuable books that convert readers into clients. So, there's people think, oh, I can just slap together a book and be called an author. True. But if you want to be seen as the credible expert, your book has to be crafted, and it has to be crafted for several different things. So do I have a minute to explain the several different things, Michelle?
Absolutely. You got the stage, girl.
Okay, so I want you to think of the word create. So when you look at books that you're going to use in your business to market your business, you want to think of these things. So first of all is C, has to create authentic relationship. Your book, the people say the know, like, and trust factor, right? So that when you write the book properly happens quite naturally. Then the R is reveal the real problem. Some of the deepest thought leadership doesn't come from having the answer. It's actually being able to identify the problem that's causing you from moving forward. So I have a really great example of this. You ready, Michelle? I think you'll like
Absolutely.
this one. All right. So a woman walks into a bathroom. I knew you were going to like this one. And she looks, and the toilet paper roll is on the wrong way again. She looks at that toilet paper roll and she thinks, can't he put it on the right way? And she goes storming out of the bathroom, and they get into a fight over the toilet paper roll. Now, is the toilet paper roll the real problem? Nope.
No.
The real problem is that she thinks that he doesn't love her because he can't take the few extra seconds to put the toilet paper roll on the way she likes it, just because she likes it that way, not because it makes any logical sense. And so for her, that toilet paper roll is a symbol of their love. The fact that he won't put it on the way she likes just indicates the fact that he doesn't really love her. And so, when you get down to the real issue, the husband's like, why is she always nagging me about that dumb toilet paper roll? Like, what's the big stinking deal? Like, who cares what way you put it on, right? He doesn't realize that she's going, he doesn't love me.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he loved me, he would. And all the ladies are going, yep, thought that one before.
I just changed him. I'm married to an engineer, dude. I want stuff done in my house. I just either I do it this way or I go, this is the way it's done. Don't ever do it again, or you'll never find toilet paper in the bathroom again. Cause if-then statements all the time.
Yeah. But the thing is, when you're looking to be seen as the credible expert, you've got to get down to the real issues.
Yeah.
So your book has to do the deep dive into what actually is really going on. Then your book has to educate and engage. So obviously you have to provide the solution in the book, and you have to engage them in such a way that they see you as a credible expert. But also engagement means giving them opportunities to connect with you outside of the book. So it's great that you have this book, but if you don't tell them what to do next, or where to go next, or how to connect with you, guess what? They don't. They're not going to look the book and go, oh, I have to find him on social media, or I have to find his website. You have to tell the people what you want them to do next. So that's E. CREA. Okay. The next A is your authentic message. And, this is where you develop your thought leadership. So thought leadership isn't necessarily coming up with something new, but it's coming up with your unique way of saying what it is that you say. So part of my thought leadership is using the word create, because it will help you to remember it easier. T, targeted. Your book must be targeted. You cannot write your book to everyone. If you write your book to everyone, you're writing your book to nobody. You have to write your book to someone. We call that someone the audience of one. So you think of that perfect person, that person that's going to get the most benefit from your book, the person who's going to become your brand ambassador, the person who's going to pass that book on to every single other person they know that has the same problem, because your book is that valuable to them. And you only get that when it's targeted. And anybody in your marketing saying, amen, amen, targeting. And then E, excellently done. So it must be edited properly, not by me. My editing team will do a good job, but don't have me edit your books. It must look good. And I don't care what people say. There's a saying, people don't judge a book by its cover. Well, in 2024, people do judge a book by its cover. And if you want to be seen as a credible professional, you better have a well done cover. So save up the money, invest in a good graphic designer to do the cover for your book. The interior must look good. The formatting inside must look good. All of these things go towards the readability of a book, because if people get stuck visually on your book, they close it and they don't pick it up again. So I want you to be thinking about all of these things. These are some of the goals that you want to have for your book. And when your book is done the right way, it becomes an effective tool. Then you have to get it into people's hands. Now that's a whole other ball game. And all I can say about that is it's not a field of dreams. So you're not going to write the book and all this business is going to come flooding in. There's a reason why I call it a marketing tool. You have to use it as a tool. You have to get it into people's hands. When you get it into enough people's hands, you start seeing results.
Love it. Yes. Speaking of which, and by the way, when you pivot, you need to write a new book. That comes with the whole targeting thing. Awesome. Kim, in a moment, I'm going to ask you about a Cinderella story of one of your clients. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.
So I'm totally excited about a Cinderella story of one of your clients.
So I've got two of them for you. So the first one's Larry Levine. His book is Selling from the Heart. Now, he already had a strong message. He was one of these people that, needed a book to get on the stage. And that was one of the main reasons why we did the book. But throughout the process of doing the book, he had a podcast already, Selling from the Heart. We did the book. He got on the stage. But one of the things that he did was he was always talking about the book. Always mentioning the book, mentioning what was in the book, talking about the book, talking about his messaging, relating it back to the book. And when he launched his book, he sold over, I think, between 500 to 1,000 copies. But for the next, well, he still is, but the next 18 months, he talked about his book. He talked about his book. It has now become a mission, and it has become a message that is resonating around the world. So whereas before he was mostly in the United States, he is now speaking internationally. He's working with international companies. People know his name. I go on to networking meetings and, if somebody will ask me, who's my best client, they'll say, Larry. Oh, I know Larry. I've seen him. Like, and I'm like, seriously? Like, how do you know Larry? Like, but his book has just changed the sales profession so much that at least within the sales industry, I'm not talking worldwide, but within the sales industry, he is starting to become one of the top sales trainers because of his message of selling from the heart, selling with authenticity, giving a rip about your clients, and not reeking of commission breath. So that's one.
Yeah.
The second one is John P. Davis. And you can see both books if you're watching the video in the background there. John just wanted to teach kids coming out of college and university how to get a sales job. So the book is titled How to Get a Sales Job. It's how you do your resume, how you do your interview, all these kinds of things. His goal was just to help these kids. Well, colleges are now and universities are picking up this book and bringing him in to teach their graduating classes in sales on how to get a sales job. So he's now speaking in college and universities across Canada and the United States, helping all these young adults get work after getting out of school. So that's two. I've got lots of them. One of probably my best known clients is Dave Sanderson. We just released his book in January, The Limitless Life. You are going to want to read this book. He was one of the people that was on the plane on the Miracle of the Hudson. He was one of the people who landed in the Miracle Hudson in the plane. So if you've ever seen the movie Sully, Dave was one of the people on that plane. And, he was already doing some speaking. He had actually been the head of Tony Robbins Security for 10 years before this happened. But since then, he's become an international speaker. This is his third book. I've had the privilege of doing the second and his third book with him. And January, I was in New York City with him to help celebrate the 15th anniversary of the Miracle on the Hudson. We did a whole huge ceremony for all of the first responders and those who, worked so fast to get the people off the plane once it landed. And so, if you're going through a lot of adversity in your life, his book teaches you, how to create opportunity out of adversity. How do you take that adversity and make it a really great thing in your life, something that defines you and changes you forever?
I love it. Well, I know some of our listeners are going to want to out celebrity him. They're going to want to be your most famous client. So how did they start that journey with you?
So the best way to do that is you can go to rtipublishinghouse.com. You can go to the contact us. There's a contact form there. Just send me a message that you were on that you heard me on Michelle's podcast and that you'd like to speak to me about doing a book. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Word Ninja Kim, and send me a DM. And I have a few different resources, including what we call the Potential Author Starter Kit. So this is a great way if you're thinking about it, if you're not sure that you've got all the pieces together, if you just got a lot of questions and you just want to gain some clarity, I walk you through everything that you need to know to determine if you're ready to write a book. And after working with me, you will know if you are ready to write a book. We will be ready to write your book. But even if you aren't ready to write the book, you will go through such a clarifying process with your messaging, your targeting, all sorts of things that we have to get ready for your book, that it'll actually increase your business without you ever actually writing the book. Now, the book still is a better tool, but this would get you started.
I love it. We will, of course, have all of Kim's links in the show notes. So go ahead and scroll down, click on the link, open up in a new browser because we're not done yet. Now, Kim, I know you've told us a bit about the story of your entrepreneurial journey, but at what point in life did you know that you were especially kind of crazy enough to think that you could become an entrepreneur?
It's funny, as a kid, I was always trying to think of ways to make money.
Fun.
I think one of the moments was actually after I wrote my first book. Actually, I ended up writing 3 books in about a year because the first book took forever, but the other 2 were really quick. And I went to our district conference. So I wrote books for network marketing because that was what I was in. That's what I wanted to teach and train. I wanted to help my own team, another team. And I was heading to the conference, and I always just gave my books away for free whenever I could. If I made some money on them, great, but that wasn't the main goal. Usually if I was selling the print books, I just sold them just above cost. And so I was heading there, and I was on our Facebook group, and I said, hey, I'm coming to conference. Anybody want my books? Right. So some people are like, yeah, bring me. So I was bringing books. And when I arrived at the conference, something very interesting happened. All of a sudden I was surrounded, and people were asking me questions, and they wanted my books, and they wanted to work with me. I actually started coaching people after that. Now, here's the thing. My knowledge had not changed. from before I wrote the books till after I wrote the books. The difference was the book. See, now I was an author. I could put that author beside my name. And that's what made the difference. That's when something started to click in my brain, like, wow, this is pretty awesome. You become an author and people see you differently. Because before that, I had been sharing my knowledge and nobody wanted to listen to me. Now all of a sudden I'm an author and I'm at this conference and people were coming up to me all the time to talk to me. Some of them had read the books and it had really helped them. Others were like, Kim, can you help me? So I started coaching because like they were willing to pay me. And I was like, that's kind of cool, right? But that was not the first intention of my book. But I realized that there's something powerful when you become an author. There's something that there's a credibility that people see you differently. Now, it's a perception. It's a complete perception. My knowledge had not changed from before I published the book to after I published the book. It was still the same knowledge, but people's perception of me changed. And I think as an entrepreneur, you know, you need to, when you do a book, it's a positioning tool and it's a credibility tool, and people see you differently afterwards. So do I have a moment to share one quick story?
Yes,
Promise you it'll
absolutely.
be
Of
quick.
course. Come on.
All right. So she's a friend of mine now, but when this happened to her, I didn't know her yet. She had contacted hepatitis C, I think back in the late 70s, early 80s as a child. And she didn't know she had it. She was in the hospital. They gave her a blood transfusion. She got hepatitis. Even back then, they didn't even know what hepatitis was. And by the time she was an adult and they realized it, she had hepatitis C, and they didn't even have hepatitis C yet. It was just non-AB hepatitis. So for many years, she's had to learn how to live with hepatitis and deal with hepatitis. And she's come up with a lot of different ways to naturally be able to deal with hepatitis. So 2015, so we didn't know each other yet. She just wanted to write a book. So she was at a conference in Toronto. Somebody was offering a book deal. She took advantage of it. And as she was writing the book, she just started telling people about it. She just wanted to write the book to help people. Before she even published the book, when she was about halfway done, they had her on radio to talk about this book. They had her on TV, and she was one of the speakers at the largest hepatitis conferences in Canada, where doctors were trying to get on that stage and they couldn't because she was considered an author and they were not.
Nice.
It's a perception. Now, did she know more than the doctors? Well, she knew more about living with hepatitis than the doctors did.
Exactly. Yeah.
But medically, did she know more about hepatitis than the doctors? No. But she could prove she was working on the book.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
You know, so if you're going to be a crazy entrepreneur, be a credible crazy entrepreneur.
Nice. I love it. And with that is our mic drop. Kim, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I know how valuable it is.
Thank you, Michelle. Hey, by the way, you know, Michelle is awesome, audience. And she was actually on my Author to Authority podcast back in January of 2023. So if you want to hear more from your awesome Michelle, check out the podcast, Author to Authority, episode 311, because it will blow your mind.
There you go. Yes, it will. Go check that out. We'll put that link in the show notes too. Awesome. Kim, again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it immensely.
Thanks, Michelle.
Peeps, this is Michelle Nedelec. Thank you for your time. Be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your friends. We love helping entrepreneurs grow.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.